Hello everyone, my name is Matt, also known as the Survivor Guy, and today I'm breaking down each and every Survivor winner by playstyle in order to figure out which way to play Survivor is most likely to net you $1 million.
The winner of the first Survivor competition is Rich.
Alright, so this one's gonna be a bit of a doozy. We have 48 Survivor winners, and we have to take their entire Survivor game and just boil it down to its essence so that we can group them with all of the other Survivor winners. So before we can start categorizing our winners, we need to come up with what categories we're putting them in. So our first challenge becomes, how can we take hundreds of different people's take on playing the game of Survivor and come up with just a few categories so that each and every one of those games fits nicely into one of those categories. It wasn't easy, but I think I came up with 4 main categories that you can more or less fit every Survivor player's game into. So the first category is what I call the aggressive player. This is going to be your person who makes big showy moves, acts in the spotlight, and kind of has a huge target on their back because of this. Typically, this type of player will win a whole bunch of immunities, which will only increase their target, but because they've won immunity, that's how they stay in the game. The next up is the sneaky player. The sneaky player is kind of the exact opposite of the aggressive player. Most of their moves are kind of done behind the scenes, so nobody really knows how good they are at the game until that final tribal where they lay all their cards on the table and people are like, wow, this person really outwit me. I had no idea that they were doing all of that. Typically, your sneaky players are going to rely more on their social game than their physical game, like the aggressive players do. The third playstyle is the coattail rider. Now, you don't see a lot of these people win the game of Survivor, but you do see a lot of these people get to the end. And the reason they get to the end is because this player, their entire game relies on finding one person, maybe 2 people, and doing whatever they say and following them all the way to the end. So typically, the coattail rider will be taken to the end as a goat, where they know that no one's going to vote for them, so it's an easy win. And then last but not least, the all-arounder. These players do a little bit of everything. They might have a few big moves to wow the jury, but a lot of their gameplay is kind of social and kind of in the background. They might win an immunity or 2, but they're not a challenge beast. They may partner with the right person to get them by, but they're an active participant in that alliance rather than just being dragged along. Some of their game will be spent on the bottom, some of their game will be spent on the top. Not a dominant performance, but also not a pathetic one. Now, even with our 4 playstyles defined, we're going to see that not everyone exactly fits into one playstyle or the other. There are some people that are kind of in between. As I go through each Survivor player, I'll give my explanation for why I put them in whatever playstyle I did. But keep in mind, some of these are subjective, so you may be like, what? There's no way that person was sneaky. They were definitely a coattail rider, or something along those lines. Quite frankly, I don't care. That sounds mean, but in the grand scheme of things, we've got 48 winners, so if I put 1 or 2 of them in a category different from where you would put them, overall our data is going to be pretty similar. Now with that out of the way, let's get into our winners. First up, Survivor Borneo and Richard Hatch. Richard Hatch is really the pioneer of Survivor. That man came up with how the game is played, really. He was the first man to form alliances and lie to people, and cheat and steal and all those things that are so famously associated with Survivor today. All of it started in Season 1 with Richard Hatch.
I'm actually planning something different from that might benefit me, and it's a little sneaky. I think I'm going to handle this by beginning to develop alliances with some folks to ensure that I move into the next round.
To categorize Richard Hatch as anything other than an aggressive player would just be a complete disservice to the game that he played. He played hard and he won for a reason. So Richard Hatch, first winner of Survivor, is our first aggressive playstyle winner. Season 2, the Australian Outback, we had Tina. Tina, I think for a lot of people, was a bit of a surprise winner. Colby had put on a pretty good show. He still, I believe, holds the record for the most immunities at 5. People thought he was kind of a shoo-in to win, and if he had not picked Tina to go to the end with him, he probably would have won. So I think I have to classify Tina as a sneaky player because she was so sneaky that Colby didn't even realize that he was screwing himself out of $1 million by taking her. And she was also a very social player. The reason she won is because she was so well liked by everyone and flew under the radar the whole time, which is kind of the textbook definition of a sneaky Survivor player. Ethan from Survivor Africa is a bit of an all-around player. He wasn't like hugely aggressive and in control of the whole game the same way that Richard Hatch was, but it wasn't really a surprise that he won. He wasn't really in the shadows. People knew that he was a threat, and he still made it to the end. Big social game, made some decent moves, won a few immunities, all-around player. Survivor Marquesas, we have Vesepia. Again, I have her categorized as sneaky for a lot of the same reasons as Tina. She kind of flew under the radar that whole time when you had really aggressive players like Boston Rob and the other Rob and Sean. They kind of took up most of the spotlight, which is why they all got voted out, allowing the sneakier Vesepia to make her way to the end and ultimately win. Survivor Thailand. This is the only season that I actually could not finish. When I first started watching it, I got to the merge and then I just gave up, and I only went back and finished it so that I could make this very video. That being said, Brian is definitely an aggressive player. He won a bunch of immunities, he was on top the entire time, making all of the decisions. I have nothing else to say about Survivor Thailand. Survivor the Amazon, definitely a step up from Thailand. Very good season, had some very strong players. Jenna, I would consider an all-around player, which I know might be a little controversial. She does have the immunity record for women at 4 immunities.
I may never win individual immunity.
The reason I don't put her as aggressive is because she really wasn't on top making huge strategic moves the entire time. After Rob turned on her, she was kind of at his mercy for a little bit, and only stuck around because Rob decided to bring her back into an alliance to vote out someone else. So she did win some immunities to stay in, she did make some decent moves with Rob at decent times, but she wasn't as aggressive as your Richard Hatch or your Brian, where she was making the huge moves and controlling the game the whole time. Pearl Islands, we have Sandra. I think Sandra kind of perfected the sneaky social game. She made it work twice where anyone else but me, I'm just here to hang out, don't worry about me, I'm just chilling, and then she makes it to the end and she wins, and that is the sneaky Survivor game in essence. Survivor All-Stars. Now this one might be a little controversial because I'm sure there are a lot of people out there that would consider Amber a coattail rider because she did kind of form that alliance with Rob on day 1, and the two of them completely controlled the game from that point out, and really Rob was kind of the figurehead of that alliance. I have Amber as a sneaky Survivor player rather than a coattail rider, and there are 2 reasons for that. The first is because a true coattail rider will do whatever the person they're aligned with says, no matter what. And I feel like in All-Stars we saw a lot of times it was Rob and Amber discussing their next move and not Rob being like, this is what we're doing.
This is what I think. You and me, Fox and Rob will be on our side. So I'll vote out Russell's from the other side.
Little Rob, as I call him, he's smart.
He's too smart. That's why we need to get him out of here.
So Amber did have some say in her alliance. She wasn't just doing what she was told. And the second reason that I think that she has a bit more to her game than a lot of people realize is when that tribe swap happened and she was the only one moved out of her tribe, yes, Rob did say to Lex, you gotta keep her around and I'll try and help you out, which we all know he didn't do. But really, she doesn't get enough credit for all the work that she did to save herself, really.
Right now, I'm just going to try to make a lot of deals and promise them a longer time in the game if they promise me a longer time in the game. In the end, it comes down to you, Lex, me, Rob, and Big Tom.
Because even though Rob made that offer to Lex, they weren't like, oh, we have to do this because Rob will help us out. They were on the fence that whole time, and Amber really did a good job making a case for herself to stick around one more vote and make it till merge. Survivor Vanuatu. I'm also not a huge fan of this season. I know that might be a bit of a controversial take, so I don't remember it super well, but I would consider Chris an all-arounder. I do remember him winning immunity in a few key moments. He was definitely on the bottom for a lot of the game because the Women's Alliance kind of was on top up until Chris won immunity and they were forced to eat themselves, and that's where he really started gaining power. So I wouldn't consider him aggressive because he really spent a lot of the game on the bottom, but I wouldn't necessarily consider him sneaky because I don't think it was a huge social game on his part that got him there. I think it was a few key timed immunities and a little bit of luck. So I would consider him kind of an all-around type of player. Next up, Survivor Palau, Season 10. We have Tom Westman. I don't think I could categorize this man as anything other than aggressive. From what I remember, he was on top, calling the shots the entire time. I remember him being a challenge beast, winning a bunch of immunities. By all means, aggressive Survivor player. So that rounds out our first 10 seasons of Survivor, and if we look at our first 10 winners, we actually have a pretty decent mix of playstyles. We have 3 aggressive winners, we have 4 sneaky winners, and we have 3 all-arounders. So I kind of expected, especially early on, one playstyle to dominate more than the others, but it seems like in the early era of Survivor, we have a whole bunch of people playing a whole bunch of different ways, and sometimes you win, sometimes you don't. So not much of a pattern so far, but I think especially as we get into the more modern era of Survivor, we're gonna see a lot more clear of a pattern brewing. So the next 10 seasons of Survivor, I kind of labeled the experimental era of Survivor, and the reason I call it that is because we have things like the Hidden Immunity Idol and Exile Island kind of making their first appearances in these seasons. So if we go through these, let's see if we get more clear pattern emerging. The first season of this era, season 11, that is Survivor Guatemala, and our winner is Danny, and if I've got to be honest, I did not remember her at all when I was doing my research for this video. Keep in mind, it's been a while since I've seen some of the older seasons, but after doing some research, I think she fits the sneaky category pretty well. She had a pretty good social game, she didn't win a whole lot of immunities, and she kind of made her moves under the table and didn't have a huge target on her. Next up, we have Survivor Panama, also known as Exile Island, and I think I have to give Aris an aggressive playstyle for this one, and the reason is because what I remember most from that season, apart from Suri, is Terry and Aris just going at it the whole time, battling for immunity, struggling to maintain control.
When you get down to the 6, where do I fit in?
That's not in our plan.
It's not part of the plan, Terry.
All right, well then I'm just gonna have to take you to the bank the whole time.
If you do that, man, hats off.
Both of them were making all their moves in the spotlight, so it's really no surprise that one of the two of them won the game. Survivor Cook Islands. I think Yule is kind of the textbook definition of an all-around player. He made very, very smart moves. Some of them were in the open, some of them were behind the scenes. He was also a pretty good social player, so absolutely all-around player. Survivor Fiji. Now you may be thinking that that's literally every season post season 30, but first, before it was those seasons, it was season 14. I really remember Yowman a lot more than I remember Earl, but I remember the two of them worked together pretty well. I think Yowman really took more of the spotlight, and Earl was more of the kind of behind the scenes guy, so that's why I have to go with a sneaky playstyle for him. Survivor China, another very, very good season of Survivor. I gotta give Todd the aggressive playstyle. I mean, he was on top the entire time, he was making moves in the spotlight, and no one was able to take him down. Anybody that tried, you were the next one out the door. Season 16, Micronesia, also known as Fans vs. Favorites, once again, one of the best played aggressive game styles. Parvati and her Women's Alliance completely dominated the game, completely embarrassed certain contestants. I don't need to bring that up.
I want to give individual immunity to Natalie.
And we're on top the entire time. No doubt in my mind, Parvati, aggressive playstyle. Survivor Gabon, pretty good season. I know a lot of people think that Bob was a pretty forgettable winner. Personally, I think he should have won, and it's not just the fact that we're both physics teachers and I feel bonded to him. I think he played a really great sneaky game. He had a pretty good social game in that he didn't really piss a lot of people off. And in a season where so many people pissed so many people off, I think that was pretty good gameplay. So, sneaky player for Bob. Season 18, Survivor Token Change. JT I've classified as an all-around winner. I seem to remember him winning a few immunities, but he did also have a pretty good social game. I remember one particular interview where he was saying that everyone trusted him and he had no idea why.
I mean, right now, we have played an awesome game. And no one wants to vote us out.
I don't know why not, neither.
The fact that everyone was willing to come to him with information speaks pretty good about his social game. He had a pretty good physical game as well, and I do think he deserves the title of an all-around player. Season 19, Survivor Samoa and the debut of everyone's favorite, Russell Hantz. I've talked about Russell on this channel a few times before. I think I made it very clear that I do not like him, nor do I like the way that he played the game. He didn't win. Surprise, surprise, Natalie won. And unfortunately, I do think I have to give Natalie the first coattail rider playstyle to win the game. She really didn't do much outside of whatever Russell said, which I'm not saying is a bad strategy in this case, because the way Russell played, he was never going to win. So, yes, I think it's a very valid strategy when you're playing with Russell Hantz to let him piss off literally everyone so that no one wants to vote for him in the end. I'm not saying that she had a terrible gameplay strategy, I'm just saying that her strategy was kind of to ride Russell's coattails. And Season 20, Heroes vs. Villains. Once again, we get another season full of Russell Hantz. But on the bright side, we also get another season full of Sandra. And Sandra, I'm putting her in Sneaky again. I'm not putting her in Coattail Rider. And the reason that I'm doing that is because she didn't just do whatever Russell and Parvati told her to. Several times during the game, she tried to link up with the heroes and get them to vote with her. And they just were too stupid to do it.
Sandra came to me saying we have to get rid of Russell. So I went immediately over to Russell.
So, she definitely didn't just do whatever Russell said. I mean, clearly in the season, she said to Russell's face, "I'm against you."
Sandra.
What? You with me or you against me? I'm against you, Russell.
And somehow Russell still didn't vote her out. So, 100% great social game. Everyone liked her way more than the other two, who they were incredibly pissed off at, and she gets her second win. So that brings us to the end of Season 10 through Season 20, which I dubbed the experimental era, and once again, a pretty decent mix of playstyles. I am a little bit surprised. Right now, it looks like there isn't really one definitive playstyle that will get you $1 million. It really seems like you have to adapt to the conditions of your specific season, but we're still less than halfway through our seasons of Survivor, so next era, 21 to 30. Season 21 through 30 I have dubbed the gimmick era of Survivor because every season had something that was like an overall theme. We had things like Redemption Island, we had One World where they were all living together, Fans vs. Favorites 2, Blood vs. Water, Brains vs. Brawn vs. Beauty for some reason. So every season had to have some kind of theme and gimmick tying it all together, hence why it's called the gimmick era. Kicking off the gimmick era with Survivor Nicaragua, we have Fabio. Now, I don't really remember Survivor Nicaragua all too well. I think it's one of those seasons that was just kind of okay and didn't really stand out in my mind at all. But from what I remember of Fabio, he won a decent amount of immunity. He wasn't a strategic mastermind. He didn't have a huge target on him because of that. So he wasn't really an aggressive player, but he did have some social game. He didn't really piss anyone off. So I have him classified as an all-around type of player. Survivor Redemption Island, Boston Rob. I don't think you could have any other playstyle other than aggressive from Boston Rob. One of the most aggressive, outside of Russell Hantz, playstyles Survivor has ever seen. He completely dominated the season, was in control of everything the whole time, had a huge target on his back, and no one wanted to do anything about it. So yeah, aggressive player, clear cut. I love when they're easy. Speaking of easy classifications, next up is Survivor South Pacific, and I don't think that anyone would disagree if I said that Sophie was a sneaky player. Definitely made all of her moves behind the scenes, let Coach take a lot of the heat, very social player, definitely sneaky. Survivor One World is next with Kim, and I have to give her the aggressive playstyle. From what I remember, she was kind of making the decisions and on top the entire game. I believe she is currently tied for 4 immunity wins, so definitely an aggressive player. Survivor Philippines, I have Denise as an all-around player. She worked pretty well in her alliance with Malcolm, even though they started very much on the bottom, going down to a tribe of 2. I remember her winning an immunity or 2, but again, not a challenge beast, so definitely an all-around Survivor player. Next up, Survivor Fans vs. Favorites 2. We have Cochran winning, and I feel like Cochran was definitely a sneaky player, 100% reliant on his social game. He was kind of seen as a flip-flopper and a bit awkward in his first season, but he was definitely on that strategy game in his second. Excellent, sneaky Survivor game. Season 27, Blood vs. Water. This one I actually had to do a little bit of research on, which was a bit surprising because I remember liking this season a lot. And I think the reason I had to do some research is because Tyson has played so many times, I was getting them mixed up. I went with All Around because I don't think he was a huge target that was on top the entire game. He did spend a lot of the game making the decisions. He might have won a couple of immunities, if I'm remembering correctly, but I don't think it's the same level as like your Boston Rob or your Parvati that really dominated the whole game. I think he had a very strong game. It's kind of on the cusp, so I decided to go with All Around. Survivor Kagiyan. Tony is definitely an aggressive player. 100%. I still to this day have no idea how those people let him get to the end. I still have no idea why Wu decided to take him to the final two. It baffles me that this man won, but there's no denying he played an aggressive game.
She had me swear on my badge, which that doesn't mean anything to me swearing on my badge. Because I'm here to lie, cheat, and steal. I'm here to drag people's dreams through the mud so I can fulfill mine.
So 100% Tony, aggressive player for sure. 2 seasons after the original Blood vs. Water, we now have Survivor Blood vs. Water 2, our indication that Survivor has begun to run out of ideas. Natalie ended up winning that season. I think she's a pretty good sneaky player. Definitely relied on her social game. She didn't really have a huge target on her back. She didn't win a lot of immunities, so definitely a sneaky player there. Survivor Worlds Apart. I'm not a huge fan of this season. I don't remember a whole lot about this season. I remember Dan saying flippers never win because that's just like, what? That, like, especially in modern Survivor when there aren't like concrete alliances, there are more voting blocks and backstabbing is kind of the main theme and people that backstab win a lot. I don't know. That's really my main memory from this season. But Mike did end up winning. I remember he went on a pretty good immunity run. He had a big target on his back and somehow still pulled it out. So I'm going to classify Mike as an aggressive player for that. So that is the end of our gimmick era, season 21 through 30. And once again, a pretty good mix of playstyle. I thought, especially in the early days, that your aggressive player or your all-arounder would have a bit of an edge because people weren't as likely to vote them out in the very beginning like they are today. But it's still a pretty decent mix of playstyles. The next batch of seasons 31 through 40 I have listed as the Fiji era of Survivor. I know Survivor is still currently in Fiji and that seasons 31 and 32 were not in Fiji. But season 33 is where they started making Fiji their home. So that's why I called this era the Fiji era. I didn't know what else name to give it. So the Fiji era kicks off with Survivor Cambodia, also known as Survivor Second Chance. I think Jeremy is again one of those players where it's like, do I put him in all around? Do I put him in aggressive? I ended up putting him as an aggressive player because I do think he kind of dominated this season. He was really on top most of the time. He won some immunities. I don't think there was really anyone else that was in the running in my mind to win this season other than him. Survivor Go Wrong. This one, I'm sure I'm gonna get a lot of, I can't say shit because that's a bad word, but I'm gonna say it anyway. This one I'm probably gonna get a lot of shit for. So I know Michelle was a very controversial winner at the time, and since then a lot of people have come around to appreciate her game. I am going to put her as our second coattail rider. And the reason that I did that is because I kind of went back and really looked at the facts of this specific season. Because originally I had her as a sneaky player. And I remember, alright, she had a pretty good social game, she made some moves behind the scenes, and then I actually did the research, and a lot of what I remembered was her gameplay in Winners at War. And looking at her gameplay in Karong, there wasn't much there. Really, in my mind, the reason she won is because there was a bit of a bitter jury and something that Aubrey did, maybe something that wasn't shown on the actual season, pissed enough people off that they voted for Michelle instead. In my opinion, all she really did in this season was go with whoever would take her to the end and then not piss people off. She didn't really have a definitive strategy, and that's why I have her as a coattail rider. Feel free to yell at me in the comments if you disagree, but that's where I put her. Survivor Millennials vs. Gen X, a season that I expected to hate, but was actually not too bad. Adam I have as a sneaky player. I never thought he was going to win throughout the whole season. I was just like waiting for him to get voted out. But he did have a pretty good social game. He did make some decent moves, especially towards the end in the shadows, so definitely a sneaky playstyle. Survivor Game Changers, this is another one where I was like, do I put her in all around? Do I put her in aggressive? I ended up putting Sarah in all around because I don't really think she spent the entire game on top. She did have a decent number of advantages, if I remember correctly, that she used pretty well. So those kind of put a target on her back. But she wasn't public enemy number one the whole time. She did have some social game, so a little bit of everything mixed up in there, which is why I have her as an all-around player. Survivor 35, Heroes, Healers, and Hustlers, that is the official title. Ben I have as an aggressive player because he did kind of win immunity at key moments, have a huge target on his back the whole game because of how good his story was. And he would have been voted out in the final four if not for the introduction of the fire making challenge, which allowed him to stay in. Again, not quite an immunity win, but kind of along the same lines. So 100% aggressive player on that one. Survivor 36, Ghost Island. Wendell and Dom kind of controlled the entire game the whole time. It was our first tie ever, which, I mean, kind of a testament to how the two of them just completely dominated the game. If either of them won, I would consider them an aggressive playstyle. So Wendell, 100% aggressive player on top the entire game. Season 37, David vs. Goliath. Very, very good season. Very, very good winner. I feel like Nick kind of perfectly encapsulates the all-around playstyle. He spent a lot of the game on the top. He spent a lot of the game on the bottom. He had a lot of good social connections. He had a few good strategic moves. He had a decent target on his back. Just a little bit of everything. A really, really solid, complete, all-around game of Survivor. Season 38, Edge of Extinction. This one stumped me a little bit, because how do you categorize the playstyle of a man who got voted out and then somehow still won Survivor? I don't know.
Third person voted out of Survivor. Chris.
I ended up putting him as an aggressive player because when he did come back, he had to play super aggressive. He gave up immunity to do the fire and win the thing. I guess he's an aggressive player. I don't know. I don't know what to do with him. Next season. Survivor 39, Island of the Idols, one of the more forgettable seasons. The only thing I really remember about the season is they had giant heads of Boston Rob and Sandra. That was pretty cool. Guy who won, his name is Tommy. I barely remember him. After doing some research, he was kind of an all-around player. Some decent moves, some moves in the shadows, won a couple of immunities. Everyone liked him. He won the game. Survivor Winners at War. We saw our second two-time winner in Tony, and while he was very aggressive the first time, I gotta give him props. I think he changed his playstyle exactly as he needed to in order to win the second time. He wasn't quite as aggressive. He did have some of his old tricks when it came to immunity idols and spy shacks and all of that. But I wouldn't necessarily consider him an aggressive player this time. I have him as more all-around. I think he really rounded out his game this time and was able to include more social elements in his game, which, you know what? Good on him. Last but not least, we have our new era of Survivor. I didn't have to come up with a name for this one, thank God, because they came up with it for us. Season 41, we have our first new era winner and our first sneaky winner of the new era. Erica kind of flew under the radar and had a pretty good social game, ultimately resulting in her win. Season 42, we had Marianne, kind of a similar story. She was a little bit out there and no one really expected her to go far, which she used to her advantage and ended up winning the game, another sneaky player. Season 43, Mike Gabler. Story repeats. Sneaky player, flew under the radar, everyone kind of wrote him off, and his social game ended up being good enough to win him the million. Season 44, Jam Jam. Again, Very good social game, not a good physical game. People wrote him off. He made it to the end and won because he had a very good social game. Have you noticed a pattern? I'm noticing a pattern. But the pattern breaks with Survivor 45D. I have classified as all around. She did have some good moves behind the scenes. She had some good moves in the spotlight as well. She won a few immunities. People did kind of consider her a target, and she made it to the end and won anyway. So first all-around winner in the new era. Season 46, we're back in sneaky territory. Kenzie, again, flying under the radar the whole game. Everyone liked her. She had a good social game. All the big targets kind of fought amongst each other, got picked off, and she won at the end. Survivor 47, this is another one where I was like, do I put her in aggressive? Do I put her in all around? Eventually, I decided to put Rachel in aggressive because she did have a huge target on her back, especially towards the end of the game. She played idols very well. She won enough immunities. I believe she also is tied at 4 immunity wins, which is the record for women in Survivor. So really towards the end, the last few episodes, they were trying hard to get her out because she had such a huge target. She played a great game. No one was able to get her out, and she ended up winning. So I would consider that an aggressive playstyle. And then our last winner at the time of recording this, Survivor 48 with Kyle. This was another one that was kind of on the cusp between sneaky and all around. In the end, I decided to go with sneaky because the kind of crux of his game was dependent on his secret alliance with Camilla. The two of them made kind of all of their moves behind the scenes, and even though Kyle was also in the major tough guy alliance, nobody really saw what he was doing with Camilla behind the scenes, which is what ultimately led to his win. So if we look at our data here, our totals are kind of spread out. Obviously, Coattail Rider having the least amount of winners at only 2 or 4.2%. But between our all-arounders, aggressive and sneaky, there's a slight edge on sneaky, 37.5%, to aggressive's 31%, and all-around's 27%. But considering we have 48 seasons of data, that's a pretty decent split. If we look at each era, I mean, our early era, we couldn't really get more split than that. Same thing with the experimental era and our gimmick era. All 3 of them are pretty divided. And if we look at our Fiji era, which as a reminder is 31 through 40, this is where we start to see the first shift, where our aggressive players and our all-around players make up 80% of our winners for those seasons. One reason that we might see this increase in the aggressive and all-around players during this specific era is because with season 35, we have the fire making challenge introduced at the final 4, and a lot of very aggressive players that have a big target on their back would normally be voted out at the final 4 or the final 5. So you get these really aggressive players, and the other players, assuming they can always vote them out later, don't feel that strong sense of urgency to get them out right away, and then you get an aggressive player going to fire, they win the fire making challenge, and all of a sudden they're sitting in the final 3. And if we take a look at our new era seasons, so 41 through 48, we kind of see the reverse of what we saw in the Fiji era, where now our sneaky players make up the majority, with 75% of winners being sneaky Survivor players. Possible reason that we might see more sneaky players in the new era is they've really kind of upped the advantages and losing your vote and all the different scenarios that could kind of shake up the game. So those advantages and little quirks in the numbers, those benefit the sneaky behind the scenes kind of players. Those that are always running numbers in their head and going through different scenarios, they benefit the most from all of the different advantages and losing your vote and all of that stuff that occur in the game, whereas your big aggressive player relies more on winning immunity and making huge moves in the limelight, which these advantages kind of hinder the ability to play that kind of game. So looking at this data, if you were to be cast on Survivor right now and go out into the game, it looks like a sneaky playstyle is the best way to go. What I will say is, it's really hard to play a playstyle of Survivor that doesn't suit your personality. I don't think we would ever see a Boston Rob or a Russell Hantz trying to play a sneaky game of Survivor because it's just not who they are and it wouldn't work for them. The same way that an aggressive playstyle wouldn't work for Sandra. I think if you, like me, are planning on being on Survivor one day, you shouldn't be looking at what have these other people done and how can I make myself like them, you should be looking more at what are things that these people have done that I can see myself doing, and how can I improve upon how they did it. I personally would love to go out there and play a Boston Rob game where I charm everyone, and I take control, and I keep it locked down the whole time, and I get to the end and everyone's like, know what, this guy's a genius, let's give him $1 million. But that's not my personality. I don't have that same charm, I don't have that ability to play the game the way he did. I know that myself, if I ever got out there, I'm more of your sneaky player. I can take elements from other players and try and push myself maybe into the all-around, but I wouldn't be good at an aggressive game of Survivor. I just wouldn't. It's not who I am. So rather than trying to figure out how to change myself to play a playstyle of Survivor that doesn't suit me, I should look at the best players who played with the same playstyle that I would, and how I can use their experiences to inform my game. So, there you have it. Every single winner of Survivor, how they played the game, and how that might inform you if you were to ever get out there on the island yourself. I hope you all enjoyed the video. It took a lot more research than I anticipated, so if you did, if you could drop a like and subscribe to the channel, I would really appreciate that. If you disagree with anything that I said in this video, feel free to leave a comment, or keep it to yourself. Like I said, it's all subjective, so thank you for watching, everyone. If you enjoyed the video, again, remember to like and subscribe, and if you work at CBS, give me a call. See you next time.